is warm.
It's warm in here.
It is really
Right.
warm.
Okay,
He's just good.
so we're gonna start with thumb CMC motions. Okay, first. And so everyone show me what is abduction of the thumb. Up off the palm, right? So remember it's not in the plane of the hand, so it's coming straight up off the palm. So if we want to measure this motion, we want to put the axis of the goniometer perpendicular to the motion itself, okay? So if we want to measure abduction, we want the axis to be going this way through, okay? So think of sticking a pin through the axis of the goniometer so that that movement can happen around that axis, okay, to help you remember. So we are going to, the stationary arm is going to be along the first metacarpal, and the moving arm is going to be along, I said first, didn't I? The second metacarpal, the moving arm is going to be along the first metacarpal. The axis is going to be the radial styloid process. That's a starting point. You want to bisect the segments, and so you will move the goni so that you can get that bisection of the segments, regardless of whether or not this is actually on the radial styloid process. If your patient is able to get her, in this case, Christine's thumb right on top of her hand, that's our 0. Okay? So,
What if I can't?
if for some reason you were stuck out here, we would take that measurement, and then that would be, so if that was your measurement, make me get up right away. Oh, yeah.
That would be 0?
That would, well, no, that we would not change our number because now this person lacks the motion. Okay, so then this person would be, you would be at 22 degrees, and then as you abducted, we would document 22 to 34.
To change the reference
Okay,
point.
we don't change the reference point if you're lacking motion. The only time we change our 0 is here because there's this is the anatomical position, and so we need to document what 0 is in the anatomical position. If you're here and you're stuck here, you're no longer in the anatomical position, so we don't call that 0.
Okay.
We take that as a lack of motion, in that case a deduction. Okay, is that clear to everybody?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
So let's go ahead and have you go all the way up. There you go. So with the hand, you have to be really careful that you're not getting manipulated by those thenar eminences, and that you're really cutting along the metatarsals. Okay, so Christine has 10, 20, 30, 42 degrees of CMC abduction, active range of motion on her right. Okay, so now, are you comfortable like that? Okay, so now we want to measure flexion and extension of the CMC joint. That was our other one. The question has come up now a couple of times. I think there was a group that were studying, is it the natural position of the hand is 0 or with the thumb adjacent to the palm? Anatomical position is the thumb adjacent to the palm, and so you want to put that person there. Okay, so now we're measuring the position of the metacarpal relative to the radius, okay, because this is going to be flexion and this is going to be extension. So this is where we're going to align the stationary arm now along the radius. And we're going to get that 0 spot. We need special filming goniometers, I tell you. They're super glary.
Lots of glare.
Okay, so we're at 26. And then, Christine, I'm going to have you do is slide your thumb out as far as you can go this way. So what motion did I ask her to do? Extension. Good. So 36 is going to become our 0, and she went out to 20, 30, 48 degrees. So now, what did I say the first number was?
36.
So 36 becomes 0, and then we take our 42 minus 36, which is 6. 26, thank you, okay. So it's good, oh, the starting was 26? Okay. But so we're gonna document that as 0 to whatever that math was, okay? Everyone good? Because I kind of screwed that up. All right. So flexion and extension are going to be measured the same way. For passive range of motion, I can still take it out and feel the end feel. I can bring it across and feel the end feel. Okay? So those are our major CMC motions. The other one that people had a lot of questions about this morning was opposition. So you remember opposition is the ability to cup the palm. And this one is a tape measure method, and where the confusion was what crease goes to what crease. So it's the IP joint of the thumb and the MCP crease of the pinky, okay? Now, when I bring Christine over, I wanna make sure the tendency is to flex the CMC and bring it over like this. That would be the extreme. You're really looking at the ability of the palm to cup, so you want to make sure that that MCP stays neutral. Okay, so I've kept her in that position, and then I would take that measurement between the two. Now this has become a passive test, right? Because I'm pressing her, so I can use this, and I can stick it in the crease, and I'm getting 2.4 centimeters. Okay, but you can also have her do it actively, but you're going to want to watch this joint, because even now, do you see that she wants to flex her CMC? So that's the one you have to really watch.
Like
Good.
that?
Yep.
Better?
Yep, that's great. The other one that I had questioned, so those are all of our thumb motions. Now you can, I'm sorry, I'm gonna flip you back over. For the MCP joint, so the metacarpal phalangeal joint is going to be that first knuckle, and then we only have one interphalangeal joint of the thumb. Again, think about sticking the goniometer, a pin through here, as an axis for the motion. So if we want to measure MCP flexion, we're going to put our stationary arm on our proximal segment and our moving arm on the distal segment. And we're going to just follow that over. Man, that glare is crazy. Okay. And then if we wanted to measure IP, we would just come and move it down to the very next joint.
What about
Okay.
for like the middle finger? What side would you go on?
So normally you would have a goniometer that you can actually put right on top of the joint, and they have very small arms. So there's a special goniometer for fingers. So for the exam, you're only going to be asked to measure like MCP, PIP, DIP of digits 2 through 5. You can measure that either for 2 or for 5, but we don't have the tools needed to test fingers 3 and 4. Okay, so just test one of those two, and you'll only be asked. We're giving you a choice of a dozen different joints you can measure. You just need to measure one, and you get to pick which one you measure. Okay. So if I was going to measure MCP flexion, sorry, get your thumb out of the way. We're going to do the same thing. We're just going to put the stationary arm on the metacarpal. We're going to put the moving arm on the proximal phalanx. The axis is right over the joint. Okay, and I can then go up to the proximal interphalangeal joint. Look at you, show off. There's a lot of motion.
And I'm weak.
Okay, and then I could do the DIP as well. Okay, it's the same logic. Just think about where it gets confusing with the thumb is like, well, what side do I put it on? If you just think about the axis always has to be perpendicular to the movement, and if you think about the movement happening around that pin you put in there, that maybe will help you, okay? The other one that I got a fair amount of questions about was, no, I didn't get questions about radial and ulnar deviation, although I can show you that one. It was MCP abduction, okay? Now remember that, so again, it'll be digits 2 through 4. We can measure abduction of all these fingers. For digit 3, there's going to be abduction in both directions. So I would document that as abduction, MCP abduction, digit 3, and then I would have 2 measures for abduction. I would have one moving in the radial direction and the other one moving in the ulnar direction. Okay? But this one is going to be the same as any other. So I'm going to put my stationary my stationary arm along the proximal, the metacarpal, and then my moving arm is going to line up against that with that proximal phalanx. You want to start at 0, okay, which means you might have to move the hand. If all the fingers are together, they're not going to be in a straight line relative to the metacarpal, so you may need to spread them out a bit to get them straight. And then from that 0 position, then you're going to have the person abduct. Okay? All right. Were there any others that people had questions about? Or do you want to go
at the
practice those?
DIP joint that it like extends some? Do you not worry about that at all?
So, so if you're doing passive, you would want to measure that.
Okay.
If you're measuring active, you probably aren't going to see that, and so you'd want to measure that as well.
And
I'd
like
say that's the most non-answer ever.
with everything, we can choose to do passive or active.
Exactly, yeah. Sometimes for fingers, it's easier to do passive, as you just saw, but then make sure you do end feels and document your end feels. Okay? So why don't we spend